What is going on, my salmonella sandwiches? It is your boy, the Cartoon Explosion here, and we're doing a spicy tier list. We've done a few, and I've enjoyed them, and I was inspired by this one. There's a video going around YouTube. Tier list of all the Ed, Edd, and Eddy characters and their power levels. So I was inspired to say, hey, you know, this guy's vision is a bit too small. Just Ed, Edd, and Eddy, why are we focusing on just one show, as excellent of a show as it may be? Why don't we branch out into the entire Cartoon Network roster and see which of the characters are truly the most powerful? So we got a list of 20 classic Cartoon Network characters, and we're going to list them all based on how strong they is, how well they would be able to fend off the other combatants in this list. And the way I did these characters is some of them is just an individual character. For example, let's say Ben 10. You know, Ben 10, he was a character in a show. Ben 10, he was the main character in that. But then there are other characters like Ed, Edd, and Eddy. They're all three pretty much the main character, so I kind of made them into one slot. They're kind of a group. And there are a few characters like that. Some of them are individuals, but then some of them are all collectively main characters in their respective show. So I counted them as kind of a group of characters. Examples like Codename Kids Next Door and Teen Titans, you know, those kind of things. So with that all out of the way, we're going to go through this list alphabetically, because truly there is no other way to go through any sort of list. And the boy who comes first is none other than Adam Lion from My Gym Partner's a Monkey. Now, I'll be honest with you, we're kind of starting off with the weakest character out of everybody here. Adam Lion has never been shown to have any kind of physical prowess, any kind of combat abilities. He's kind of a weakling, no noteworthy skills, so the boy's kind of pretty much a D tier, undoubtedly. He's just got no redeeming qualities. Then we roll on into Ash Ketchum. Ooh, a classic right here. Ash is a pretty potentially strong opponent, depending on the Pokemon he has on him at the time. But even if it's just him and his boy Pikachu, he could pose a big threat. He's got some big guns packing that he could throw out. He's got Pokemon for days. So Ash could definitely hold his own against a lot of different characters that'll come up in this tier list. Regardless of what his team is, they're going to be pretty powerful. Ash Ketchum has shown himself to be a pretty competent trainer, finally at least getting to the Pokemon Championship and becoming a Pokemon champion. So he's proven himself, especially lately. So I would put him at the very least in A tier. I wouldn't say he's overpowered, but he's definitely got some good, strong assets he's working with in his Pokemon. Next we got Ben 10. Now Ben is another pretty strong character. He's got a lot of potential in him. Of course, the Omnitrix gives him abilities, a bunch of different kinds of aliens, and they all have super powerful qualities about him. You got Accelerate, which lets him just be a super speedster. You got Forearms, who's basically Machamp, and he's got a lot of different kinds of aliens that'll suit a lot of different combat scenarios. So he's pretty adept. He's got a lot of options. The biggest caveat with Ben 10, however, is that the Omnitrix locks him into one alien, and it's only for a limited amount of time. So he chooses one thing, he's locked into that, and he's only got a limited amount of time to use that alien to beat his opponent, or else he reverts back to his little squishy human form, in which he ain't going to be doing much. I think he's a pretty strong candidate regardless, so I'm still putting him in A tier. I don't know if he's as strong as Ash, because Ash has got equally a lot of potential and a lot of options he could be working with, and he's not stuck on a time limit and not locked into one Pokemon. He could switch around, so that's where I would put Ben. Next, we've got Billy, Mandy, and Grimm. Now, these three, I kind of was iffy on putting them all three together, but I kind of figured they all are main characters in their show. Billy and Mandy have been shown to have some, you know, a little bit of combat potential, but Grimm is really the ace in the hole for this team. He's extremely powerful, considering he is literally the Grim Reaper. I think they have a lot of potential, and they've shown the ability to take on pretty big threats before, and I think they have some decent strength behind them. So I would say they're probably a low A tier. I won't say they go crazy, but Grimm and his scythe can definitely dish out some damage, and Billy and Mandy could probably dish out a little bit of damage on their own. Not nearly as much as Grimm, but I think together they could do some serious dishing out of damage. Next we got Chowder. Ooh, Chowder. From Chowder, actually. Chowder's kind of a strange one. He's been shown in his show to have a lot of different and relatively strong abilities. Like, he's been shown to be able to levitate, have like very super strength. He's been able to just eat things that you shouldn't be able to eat, but these usually relied on jokes being told. So his his abilities are very comedy based. So I would count them as being somewhat inconsistent. He is, after all, just a child. He's not got a ton of power behind him. He might have some potential in the weird abilities he's been shown to have on the show, but I'm not comfortable putting him too high. I'll put him in C tier, but above that, I don't think he's doing too much. Next we have Courage, the Cowardly Dog. Courage, I would say, out of all of the characters, is definitely the biggest damage sponge. He's able to take so much damage. Like, in the show, he's been shown countless times to just be able to take hits all day long and just keep going. Especially when his loved ones are in danger, when he's got Muriel and Eustace to fight for. The boy can take any amount of damage. He's seemingly impenetrable. And he's been shown to be a pretty creative problem solver too. He's been able to defeat some pretty massive opponents in pretty unique ways. So he's definitely got some smarts behind him. However, he's not exactly got a ton of offensive options, so while he can take in a lot of damage and possibly outsmart the opponent in some way, he's not really going to be doing anything outside of that, like offensive wise, so he doesn't have too many options to work with there. He's not really going to be dishing out too much damage of his own, so I would put him solidly in B tier. He's got potential for sure. B tier, I think, is where Courage would sit. Next we have Dexter from Dexter's Lab. Dexter is a pretty strong opponent, honestly. He's got an arsenal of weaponry that he's invented himself. He's got a giant mech suits. He's got serums that turn him into giant kaiju monsters. He's got a lot of harsh weaponry at his beck and call, and the boy's obviously a super genius. So despite being a very young child, a very physically frail character, I would put him in S tier. Probably low S tier, but S tier nonetheless, because his arsenal of weapons is pretty powerful. Next we go on to Ed, and Eddie. These three actually have a surprising amount of power behind them. Obviously, Ed has been shown numerous times in the show to be ridiculously strong, lifting whole houses and cars and trees and just insanely heavy things with ease. And then Double D is obviously, a very smart and a creative person who's been able to, build his own little contraptions just with regular household objects. And then Eddie is just a very manipulative and, charismatic character that can definitely get some sneaky little manipulations going on. So the three of them all have pretty diverse skills that complement each other well. And while they aren't exactly the most cohesive team, they definitely have some potential. I wouldn't say that they're crazy strong. They have a decent amount of strength for just being three kids, but they are still three kids, and they do have a lot of character flaws. Ed is incredibly dim-witted. Double D physically is extremely frail, and then Eddie's ego would just get in the way. So I would put them also in B tier. I think they have potential, but I don't think they're anything crazy. Next we go on to Flapjack from The Misadventures of Flapjack. He's never been shown to have really all that much as far as combat prowess goes. I mean, he's a very sweet character. He might be able to just make the opponent like him because he's a likable, weird little goofball. But outside of that, I don't see Flapjack doing too much. And even if we say Captain Knuckles is also a main character of that show and let them work together as a team, they still aren't going to be doing much. Captain Knuckles ain't exactly a combat master either. So I would put them also in D tier. Next we go on to an interesting one. Jackie Chan from Jackie Chan Adventures or something like that, I think the show is called. But this is an interesting one. Jackie Chan, just Jackie Chan. I mean, it's not just Jackie Chan. He's on top of being a very formidable martial arts master, he also wields some like magical abilities. So there are other things he could do besides just straight fighting. So he has a very strong moveset to work with here. One of the most adept fighters out of all of these people. He's probably got the most combat experience, the most actual training in combat. So I would say he's a decent A tier. I won't say he would get crazy. I think he's got a lot of skills and potential that he could work with, but I don't know if he would be like super overpowered, especially compared to the other A tiers. So I think he's a decent A tier, not bonkers, but decent nonetheless. Next we got Jelly Cabin from Camp Laszlo. Another example of characters that have never been shown to have combat abilities. They've never been shown being able to take down an impressive opponent. They're, again, 3 children. Although they are animals, so they do have probably a bit more strength than human children would have. Laszlo is a monkey of some sorts. Raj is an elephant. And then Clam is a pygmy rhino. I would put them in D. Probably high D, just because, like I said, they're at least animals. They have more strength than the typical human child would, but not much else going on for him. Next, we got Johnny Bravo. Now, Johnny Bravo, obviously, just from the looks of him, you could tell he's got some strength behind him. The man's got a physique that's just not quitting. And although he's never been shown much in combat situations, I think just his extreme, impressive physical stature shows that he's at least got some strength behind him. And I think that's enough to put him in B tier. Like I said, it's never really shown how powerful he is in combat, but I think he has potential just based on how physically fit he is. He's an extremely muscular man. Next, we got Johnny Test. Ooh, I don't like this character. So Johnny Test, on his own, without the help of his sisters, is kind of useless. I mean, he's gonna end up getting himself in more trouble than his opponent is. Even if we give him Dookie, his dog, as another main character that can be, you know, part of his squad, they're not doing much. Without the help of his sister's technology and advanced knowledge, they typically are the ones who get themselves in trouble and only cause further chaos for themselves. So I would say they're at very least C tier, just because, you know, Johnny Test is at least a teenager, so he's gonna have more strength than the literal children that are in D tier. And Dookie's a dog, so dogs do bite, and that's something he can potentially do. So that's there you go. Next we got the Kids Next Door, and this isn't one of those team kind of characters. They're all technically main characters. The main group of 5 kids, number 1 through 5, I consider them all to be main characters of the show, so I count them as one collective main character group. I think they're formidable fighters for sure. They're all shown to have some decent knowledge of some kind of martial arts, and they're definitely shown to be pretty creative problem solvers. They have a pretty strong knowledge of being able to build weaponry with common household items. Although the weaponry they build is never really particularly powerful. Again, they're children, so they're not exactly the most threatening physical force, and their technology, while impressive, isn't the most powerful stuff, especially compared to someone like Dexter, who's been shown to have crazy technology. I would say Codename Kids Next Door, I would put him in high B. They're probably definitely the highest ranked B tier character. I don't really see them being able to take on the characters in A tier without some trouble. Even Jackie Chan, since he's got martial arts capabilities and, you know, some magical potential, I just don't think they're going to be beating out anyone in A tier. So I think they're a high B tier character is where they fit nicely. So next we move on to Mac and Blue from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And Mac and Blue, again, they're just children. They're little babies. They don't have any combat potential. They've never been shown to be incredibly adept at fighting. Blue is kind of like a sneaky manipulator, so maybe there's some potential there, but I really don't think they're going to be getting up to much. I'll put them in D tier, probably behind Laszlo and company. Next, we got Mystery Incorporated. They're not ever shown to be exceptionally powerful fighters, but they are you know, a smart group of teenagers. They've been able to sleuth problems, and Scooby is of course a dog, and as we discussed with Dookie, dogs do typically bite when they are in combat situations, so that could be potentially powerful. And while I don't think they're necessarily strong fighters, I think together as a team they work well, and they would be able to at least potentially outsmart an opponent. But as far as physical prowess goes, I don't think they're getting too much done, so I would put them in high C tier. Next we go on to the Powerpuff Girls. My god, y'all. These girls are not to be messed with. They are literally, I'll tell you right now, I think they're the strongest Cartoon Network character out of all of the characters on this list. I think the Powerpuff Girls are insanely strong. They're all basically miniature Supermans. They have flight, they have super strength, they have super speed, they have laser vision. They're just super strong. They have so many abilities, and they've been shown to take on huge opponents. And they're a pretty, you know, cohesive team. They work pretty well together. Of course, they're still children. They can be easily manipulated. They can butt heads, and, you know, things might fall apart a little bit, but still, their raw strength and all of their powers is enough to fight through anybody on this list without problems, without hesitation. I would give them the strongest Cartoon Network character, at least on this list. Next we have Rigby and Mordecai, the classic regular show duo. And I don't think they're particularly strong. I don't think they have a ton of combat potential. They're kind of lazy goofballs, so I don't think they would even try to fight. They would just kind of not feel like it. But if they did go to fight, at least they're adults and they're also animals, so they might have some unique animal attributes that they can work with, and they're a little bit stronger than a child would be, so I would at least put them in C tier. And it is 2 people, so, you know, something there might be something there, but not much at all. Next we have Samurai Jack. And Samurai Jack is, I think he's a really strong character. I think he's exceptionally talented. I think he could beat out everybody in A tier and below. So I'm willing to put Samurai Jack in S tier. He's an extremely adept fighter. His sword fighting capabilities are unmatched. His hand-to-hand combat is also extremely, you know, off the charts powerful. He's exceptionally stealthy. He's sneaky. He's very strategic. He's an incredibly strategic thinker, and he's got a ton of combat experience, not only against similar opponents to himself, but massive demonic opponents. So I think, despite just being an old school samurai, I think he's potentially really got a running for one of the strongest characters on this tier list. Of course, I don't think he'd be beating out the Powerpuff Girls anytime soon, but I could see him giving someone like Dexter, despite Dexter's availability of crazy technology, I could see Samurai somehow, you know, getting a win out on him potentially. So I might even put him ahead of Dexter. I think he's a very strong character. And last but not least, we got the Teen Titans. These characters are also very, very powerful. They are a very adept team. They work really well together on most occasions. They're teenagers at least, so they aren't like the Powerpuff Girls to where, you know, they might get more easily manipulated and stuff. They have a lot of combat experience. They're all very, very powerful in their own right, especially someone like Starfire and Raven, who have amazing capabilities with their magical and or space powers. So I would put them in S tier. I would put them slightly behind Powerpuff Girls, though. I think the Powerpuff Girls are slightly edging them out just in raw power alone. I think the Teen Titans are a more cohesive team. I think they work better together, and I think there's a small chance that they could find a way to take down the Powerpuff Girls. I would put them in S tier, and with that, I think that's a very nice list. I hope you like the fact that it just so happened to work out in this very nice little columns right here of 4 in each row. Didn't intend on doing that, but it kind of just happened. What do you think of the power level tier list we got going on here? Who do you think is the strongest out of all these characters? Besides that, I'll see you in the next one, everybody. Take care.